What is your weird classmate story? This is actually less annoying weird and more I'm in awe, but also confused kind of weird. In grade 4, there was this boy in my class. He was cool. He was obsessed with tanks and loved to draw them from memory during class. I was a girl, and the other girls thought it was weird that I wanted to hang out with a boy, but the girls were jerks, so I didn't care. Anyway, once during lunchtime, he told me he was a bee whisperer and told me to follow him. There was this big bush full of pink flowers in one corner of the schoolyard, and it was full of bees. He puts his finger near the bush, and one bee lands on his finger. He tells me the key is to be gentle and make them trust you by not being afraid. He then picks a flower that one bee was sitting on and slowly folds the petals into the middle and pinches it between his fingers, essentially trapping the bee. He then puts the flower with the bee in his pocket, and we continue building stuff out of sticks. Then recess is over, and in the middle of class, he taps me on the elbow, opens his pocket, and lets the bee crawl out. I just watch as he lets the bee crawl over and between his fingers until one girl nearby shrieks, "James has a bee." The teacher looks up and in a bit of a panic demands he let the bee go outside. He does. Just walks outside with the bee just sitting in the palm of his hand. That was the first and last time he ever showed me the bee thing, and he moved away at the end of that year. I'm naturally skeptical, and maybe my childish wonder at that time distorted my memory somehow, but a part of me still believes that the king of the bees is out there, somewhere. This kid brought a taser into my middle school. When some kids wanted proof that it was real, he tased a banana. This is going to sound terrible, but this was a small town, class of 50 kids. Didn't realize until I was in college that the weird classmate just had fetal alcohol syndrome. This kid named Alec used to walk around hissing at people randomly and throwing things down the hall. In freshman year, they found a hit list in his locker. I somehow ended up on it, even though I had never said a single word to him before. A girl I went to elementary school with used to think she was a dog. She would act like a dog, panting, barking, licking her arms, etc. We were all kids, and it wasn't frequent enough for it to be weird, but one day she comes up to me as we're putting away our backpacks on the hooks and sticks her tongue out to reveal a glob of her own hair on her tongue. She then goes shhhhh and walks away. I will never forget this. We actually became closer acquaintances in high school later on, but I was too embarrassed to ever bring it up, mostly for her. When I was in 6th grade, one of the special education kids whipped his peen out in gym class and started jerking off, like really jerking off. Kids were losing their crap. He actually managed to finish before the coaches could get to him. I hired him as a temp worker a couple years after high school when I was overseeing a remodel of the retail store I was managing at the time. My boss was mad I hired a retard, her words. I stuck to my guns and let him sort stuff for a couple weeks. He was a badass, like faster than I was. He never once whipped his peen out. Smartest kid in the entire school, never talked. 4 years. About 6 classes together. Not one word. I tried my damnedest. Best I could get was writing or typing on screen in computer classes. People made fun of him, but I could tell he was a super nice kid, so I took up for him when I could. Travis, if you see this, hit me up. We had a guy at my high school who was a little socially inept. He would walk through the hallway with a sharpened pencil extended in front of him like a spear and say, make way, mere mortals." Whenever he would walk to class. He also got in trouble for looking up 30th on the library computer. Of course, actual 30 sites were blocked, so he researched pictures of Roman and Greek statues of nude women. So far I'm 80% sure no one is describing me yet. That's a relief. This guy's at my school would literally do anything you dared him to do. Slap a kid with a slice of pizza? Done. Take a dump in the urinal? No problem. Take his shirt off in the middle of the cafeteria. Pour milk on himself while screaming? Easy. I talked to him a couple times in classes that I had with him, and he actually seemed fairly normal. He doesn't have any social media, so IDK how he is doing currently. This guy was playing games on his laptop instead of paying attention while the teacher was talking. He minimized the window and left to go to the toilet or something, can't remember. His backgrounds were anime and changed every 10 seconds. One of them was straight up hentai, the juicy stuff, liquid everywhere. Every student noticed, and just before the teacher looked over at his screen it changed to something completely innocent. He was my school's Kevin. This one kid was caught with a machete in his backpack. This was around the time when people would dress as clowns and creep people out. So the kid's excuse was that the machete would be used to fight the clowns off. He was expelled. I unenthusiastically attended my 5-year reunion because a few of my friends I hadn't seen in forever were going. Several cocktails in, a bunch of people were sitting around swapping gossip about what had become of the oddballs from our year. This one guy says I heard this one girl from our class got into 30 indies. Like a crackhead now. My interest was piqued, since hardly anyone from our small town ever did anything with their lives other than get married and have babies. So I asked for details. He told me that this girl had somehow gotten into fetish 30 bondage and stuff, and he knew it was true because someone sent him a link to a site once. I asked him if he could find it, and after some wasted phone searching he found the email and clicked the link. Okay, well, I was close. It's just a picture, not a link to the actual 30th. But that's what he told me. I took the phone, enlarged the picture, a girl with an eyes wide shut style eye mask on, smoking a cigarette, wearing a leather corset and fishnet stockings, one stiletto heel placed in the back on a kneeling slave. I sighed and gave him his phone back. Josh, are you sure she's a crack whore 30 star? And not just like modeling in an essentially PG-13 fetish photo shoot? Maybe because she, I don't know, majored in art like an idiot and couldn't get a real job right away. He stared at me with dazed, wasted confusion, not connecting the dots. Never mind. Cool story. Great seeing you. TL/DR. The crack whore from my high school was me. Dear God, I have a great story. I moved to a new state my sophomore year of high school. I, obviously, didn't know anyone. So I had no idea what kids were considered weird. In my first couple of weeks, the kid that sat behind me asked if I could get him a tissue. The box of tissues was on a window ledge right beside me, so I oblige and hand him one. Then I hear super loud nom 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 nom, and this guy straight up devours this tissue. He just looked at me and smiled. I looked around the room and everyone was staring at him. I knew a guy who went to my college for a couple of years with Asperger's, who really liked rocks. He would occasionally approach me and start talking about them, and I'd listen sometimes when I didn't need to go somewhere. But I also witnessed many times where people were unnecessarily mean to him. There were some people that thought of him as a novelty and would feign friendship and feed him alcohol just because they thought it was funny when he was wasted. I wish I would done more to help him out and stop them, especially right before he left. I went to the gym for a run and all the treadmills were taken. So I went to the indoor track that was hardly used. About 10 minutes into my run, he comes in with his mom and goes into the middle of the track with his mom. He starts showing her these various sword fighting techniques that he had learned, because apparently he was really into that too. Then he notices me as I'm doing a lap and eagerly waves. I wave back and he motions me to come. So I took out my earbuds and jogged over. He introduced me to his mom as his friend. I could tell it made her really happy too, that he had a friend, and he was really happy too. I had only briefly talked to him a few times, but I did my best to be as friendly as I could be. After a few minutes, I excused myself, saying that I had to get going. So I left. That was pretty much the last time I saw him, because he left school shortly after. He was a really nice guy that most people just misunderstood, and looking back I wish I had tried to get to know him better. The weird kid in my graduating class always walked around with a sketchbook in his hand. He would draw graphic, yet very realistic looking sketches of peens and hentai during class, and then somehow made them blend together into beautiful landscapes or works of art. It was like playing Where's Waldo every time he showed you his sketches, except with peens. Other than that, he was quite a funny dude to be around and everyone in our grade liked him. Last I heard he got accepted into a well-known arts school in the States, and is apparently flourishing there as an artist. I hope he's still walking the halls with his peen book in hand and enjoying his little artistic life out there. Older lady, let's call her Darcy, in a lit class, randomly assigned to do a group project with her and about 3 others. Our topic, given to us by the prof, was the Industrial Revolution. We quickly realize we can't trust Darcy to do any actual work. She just twists herself in circles trying to, and not, understand the project. At mandatory meeting with prof to discuss our progress, Darcy gets herself worked up because she can't understand the topic. Prof asks why. Because I don't even know which countries fought the Industrial Revolution. How can I present on it? I side-eye the professor thinking, look what we've been dealing with for weeks. I've never seen such a perfect deer in the headlights look. Prof talks us through breaking down assignment and we agree Darcy should just do the intro easy peasy, right? Apparently not. Another partner made the mistake of giving out her phone number and Darcy calls her at about 2 AM complaining about how hard the project is and she doesn't understand. She ranted for over an hour. Classmate thinks she was wasted. Now in my mind I call her wasted Darcy. Day of the presentation comes and we are ready to be done with stupid topic and Darcy. Her intro is about 5 minutes worth of information about how only Europe had the Industrial Revolution because only white people were smart enough to invent it. We were mortified. And we still had to get up and present our info. That presentation was the lowest grade I got in the class. But the prof stopped doing group presentations after that. For as long as Darcy was on campus, if she saw anyone in the group she'd corral them and complain about the group presentation topic. I learned to stare at the ground if I saw her walking around, so we wouldn't have to talk. I'm glad she was trying to get an education. But oh boy did she always seem confused and overwhelmed. There was a super weird kid in my class who one day seemed to just disappear. Well, apparently he got arrested for cutting a chicken's head off and using the throat and body like a fleshlight. No one was surprised. She thought she was a cat. She crawled around on the floor, meowed, and purred. Teacher allowed this, and I didn't really care because she was still normal besides the cat thing. It got really weird when my friend suddenly screamed ow, frick, followed by the girl going, mew from under the table. She bit his leg. A fake. She has no problems. Just likes being a cat. When I was a junior in high school there was this third freshman, named Austin. He thought he was a rebel. Austin had bad acne. He would pop his pimples and eat it to gross everyone out. He tried his best to make everyone hate him. Then he would cry after school to the teachers that no one liked him. He ate his vocabulary book at a rate of 1 or 2 pages a day throughout the school year. The teacher sent him to the office so many times, but next class he was back at it again. He was so determined. I wish I'd asked why. I hate that I still remember this, but there was this one like weird nerdy kid in my 8th grade English class who, whenever he applied chapstick, would take 2 trips around the lips and then like stick it in his mouth a little and wiggle it around. This was like once an hour too and it just really creeped me out. A guy named Aaron. Big, stocky, wild unbrushed hair to his shoulders and a face full of freckles. Always brought his pet rat to school. Tried to crack open a coconut on his desk in the middle of SNE. When it came to choosing year 12 prefects, he decided to give it a go. Part of applying is giving a speech in the performing arts auditorium to everyone, so they'll vote for you. He gave a long rambling speech, but the highlight was him pulling a live pigeon out of his backpack and setting it free in the auditorium yelling fly. Jeremy loved chickens. He would go on about the chickens on his farm, depleted an entire tube of topical ointment every day, would maliciously shank people he didn't like with mechanical pencils, would inject graphite in himself with said mechanical pencils, held his books like he was carrying logs, with the smallest books on top. He could sprint down the halls with these stacked books without dropping any, and did so after he tripped an obese kid. Had an unsettlingly strong resemblance to the medic from Team Fortress 2. Okay, we are gonna call him Andy. In middle school, when we would read our textbooks, Andy would rip his hair out, smell it, and either eat it or sprinkle it in the textbook. Andy also had retched mo. In between classes, he would run down the hallway, jumping in between people, and when you saw him coming, You would instinctively hold her breath. One time, in high school, the entire school smelled like your asshole. The entire morning everybody was talking about the smell. Finally, teachers and the principal figure out it was Andy. No, it wasn't his normal beau, but he had crap his pants and was sitting in it all morning. D. Dude in my math class would jack off to hentai on Tumblr over his pants. Then again, I could be the weird classmate for being the voyeur who would willingly observe LMAO. I had just returned to public school after homeschooling for a few years, moved a lot during that time. First day in school and this skinny grade 10 boy walks up to me and puts his finger on my arm, looking intently at me. I brushed his hand away, and he did it again, followed up by saying, "I'm planting eggs in you." Nope, nope, nope. Kid ate puss from pimples and that sort of thing. Forgot to turn in his homework by the 5-minute mark and class teacher wouldn't take it. Kid proceeded to then smash the table and scream, "Why does life hate me?" and whole bunch of obscenities before the counselors came and got him. There was a goth kid I was new. Consider him a friend of a friend. At that sort of distance, he was a fun person because he did all sorts of weird crap. But I kept that distance because getting any closer to him as a friend would have just been bad. He once bragged about cheating on his girlfriend 7 times, to which I asked him why he didn't just suck it up and break up with her already. Then he started going, "But I'm cute. She doesn't care." So I rolled my eyes, said, "Yeah, sure." He got offended because I didn't think he was cute, but in a joking way, since we were like kind of friends but not really. Well, that girl broke up with him because she knew her worth, and he kind of broke down. He told me later about how he got banned from a store because he got caught jerking off in one of the clothing sections. So I asked, "So why'd you do that?" Apparently because a blouse there reminded him of his ex. And then he claimed to be on the sex offenders list for doing that. I don't actually know if this really happened, as it's only based on what he says about himself. But it's weird if he did it, and it's still weird even if he didn't, because he was bragging about it. Out of the blue one day, he called me over just to tell me, "I know why she and I didn't work out. It's because I have bipolar disorder, and she has Asperger's, and that's a bad mix of mental illnesses." I basically said, "Good for you for figuring out then. I guess you're getting treatment." It came out a little apathetic sounding, but I didn't know what else to really say to that. He didn't really reply to what I said. He just started walking away and went, "I'm going to wrestling practice now." So I said, "Okay, bye." He eventually got a new girlfriend, and then they ran away to another state. The girl's mom was seriously distressed for the longest time. They both came back and are living with his mom until she, the girlfriend, can finish high school, so she at least won't be a dropout, because that was a real risk for a while. I've told this one before, but here goes. Back in high school, this popular blonde girl, who looked like a more youthful Terroriad, had 2 churlish guys vying for her affections. She convinced these 2 guys to fight shirtless on the school field for her entertainment, in front of the blonde girl and a small crowd. These 2 knuckleheads took their shirts off and had a surprisingly brutal fist fight. One of them ended up so badly beaten he went to hospital with a fractured eye socket, swollen lip and bloodied nose. Both guys were suspended for a month. The blonde skipped away into the sunset and, as far as I'm aware, never gave either of them so much as a kiss on the cheek for their troubles. I was in my figure drawing class, where we have nude models come in, so we can draw them. In my class there was an overly hyper fresh out of high school kid. So one day he decided to wear some basketball shorts to class. I didn't think much of it until he pitched a tent in the middle of the session, then kept messing with it trying to hold it down. The model eventually noticed and got uncomfortable and left. Since then we have had to draw nothing but men, being the straight man I am. I'm mad. If he has it, then it should just be a rule of thumb not to wear basketball shorts. Some kid brought a katana to school and got arrested. Update: IDK the kid's name, but I would assume it was a white kid who specializes in Japanese culture. Kid kept wanking in the back of he class. Everyone wanted him to stop, but nobody wanted to speak to him. When I was 12 I had this friend, and as I got older I found him to be more annoying. and childish to the point where I really hated him. Then later I found out that he has a mental disorder that caused him to stop mentally aging at 11 or 12. Late-ish to the party, but I have a doozy. I was fortunate enough to not share any actual classes with him, but I did share one with his roommate. I also went out with a dude that lived on the same dorm floor as him, so I have my own special things to add. We are going to call him Irving, just because I don't know if he's on Reddit and his actual name is equally odd. The first time I saw him was freshman orientation. A friend and I were people watching in order to kill time, and in walks Irving. Physically, he's not great to look at, a little overweight, acne, hasn't figured out his hair, wears baggy jeans, not in a hood way, but like a dad way, slumped over shoulders, beady eyes, silent almost always. He spent 3 hours pacing around the gym the event took place, walking through basketball games and people having conversations, silently, without giving a frick. Fast forward a couple months, and I'm going over to visit my boyfriend. I get to his room to find the door locked, knock on it, and he opens it just a little. He pulls me through the door and then relocks it immediately. Apparently earlier that day Irving had decided to walk into my boyfriend's room, sit his ass on the floor, and start watching the B-movie. Why? We don't know. He didn't really respond to people telling him to leave, and he's just odd enough that people don't feel comfortable kicking him out physically. Eventually he went to get something from his room and my boyfriend locked him out and had been hiding ever since. This is something that would happen several times over the next months. Later that night we hear a knock on the door. We think it's my boyfriend's roommate, so we unlock the door and open it. Lo and behold, Irving, standing there with a tray of something and fillo cups. Us, what is that? Irving, I made them. Try one. Us, yeah. But what is that? Irving, they have cheese and stuff. Us, what kind? Irving, mumbles a vague name. Couple this interaction with an unnerving stare and you can understand why we took one. Promptly relocked the door, and didn't eat it. He would show up at the dorm parties my boyfriend would host sometimes, stand staring silently at the girls, and not really acknowledging the guys. To quote his roommate, if you're a girl, there's a 99% chance Irving has had a thing for you. The best example I can give of this is when he asked a friend of mine if he could give him tips on how to get with a girl. My friend, who happened to be the girl's boyfriend, found it both hilarious and slightly disturbing. Later that year in the class I share with his roommate, we are talking about the end of the year presentations every freshman has to give. His roommate, a nice guy, takes this time to unload his troubles on us. So his topic was about love and marriage or whatever, right? He thought that it would be a great idea to order a bunch of condoms to show his class. I crap you not. He ordered a bunch of male and female condoms to pass out to his entire class as his demonstration. Like, to keep. The class is taught by a monk. For frick's sake. He didn't see the issue. It's a Catholic college. It's gotten to the point that I don't go back to my dorm because he's always there and he always asks where I've been and where I'm going. For some reason he always assumes that I'm hanging out with the swimming team and going to crazy parties or something. I just don't correct him anymore. He thinks I literally am blood brothers with the swim team. Irving, what a king. As someone who was the weird kid, I have a fear that I'm somewhere in here. I was the weird classmate and this is my funniest story I heard from a guy who didn't know the story was about me. I was in class and I finished my work early, so I started doodling in my notebook by myself, since I didn't really talk to anyone. So I get thirsty, and I pull out this water that my ex had given me. It was like water with minerals or something, but the water itself was black. I start drinking it, the water goes down wrong, and I start choking. I spit out half a mouthful of black water onto my notebook and run out with the bottle. I ended up running to a restroom 2 buildings away, because the one in that building is the one that gave me the creeps. So I take about 20-ish minutes trying to stop choking in a completely different building, so when one of my classmates was sent to look for me, they couldn't find me. Eventually they started freaking out, because what they saw was some guy just choking, spitting out a black liquid onto his notebook, then disappearing, so they called the ambulance. When I came back after a good 30 minutes, after drying my shirt that had been soaked, I got sent to the office and the principal told me never to bring that drink again. Side note, the water wasn't even that good, it had a nasty metallic taste to it. Fairly tame but still weird. Had a kid inquire with me back in the 2000s who would use the teacher's computer every day before and after class to check how his eBay auctions were going. Did the whole buy things that were on eBay slightly undervalued and auction them right back again for a slightly higher price thing. I was the weird classmate. In middle school I found a sparrow in the ground. Clearly sick. Jerking around. I didn't know what to do, but I wanted to help it so much that I picked it up. It continued convulsing and died. I felt so bad for it that I wanted to bury it, but the others got wind that I had a dead bird in my pocket and told the teachers, who pulled me out of class and scolded me, making me throw it away. I think they assumed I'd killed it. Still, sometimes the weird classmate had a reason for their actions. I know I'm still weird for doing this, but I was 12 and I felt really bad that I didn't know how to save it. I just wanted it to be buried. I guess I thought it would atone for the fact that I couldn't save it. Sat by a kid in math that dressed in Dragon Ball Z merch and drew the characters all class. Smelled extremely strongly of pickles too. After, I failed math because of the nauseating scent of dull pickles. I'm not sure if he had a disorder or what, but he definitely wasn't all up there. He had his 2 or so friends and seemed okay most days. Once in a while he'd screech or do something random to try to get attention. One time he came in begging for one of the dudes to kick him in the nuts. I stopped talking to him after he snorted wasabi. There was other shenanigans I'm sure I've forgotten. His big event though, he comes in class with a long jacket in Florida freaking heat. I didn't see, but supposedly just before class he flashed some girl in our class and runs out. Either way, never saw him again. My super weird silent chemistry partner during sophomore year shot and killed another student at school during my junior year. So that was nuts. In high school here was this kid with diabetes that would eat gross stuff at lunch like cookies and barbecue sauce and gummy worms and ranch etc just to gross people out. Then one day in a class I had with him, he scooped up all the fruit flies from the windowsill and just ate them, completely unprovoked. Then the very next day at lunch he took I think 3 bites out of a soda can, swallowed each bite, and everything was fine. Guess it didn't cut his insides on the way out, and he was still coming to school and eating gross stuff and saying weird things. As I typed this, I realized what a champ he is. A kid from my tuber section brought napalm to school because his friend made a bet with him. Later that same friend was paid $8 to report the kid and he ended up getting sent to alternate school. Edit for clarification, he made it at home and told people around the school. We were eating lemmis and talking about it, and then the girl I was at a table with said, "What if all Gian thought of Cassette as more than a daughter?" I proceeded to tell her no a lot and internally scream, "Bish, stop watching hentai." My freshman year of high school, I took a class called Foods during first period. In my group was this one dumb skater kid who somehow managed to show up stoned at 7:30 AM. He got moved from my group to another after he sleepily waved a knife in my general direction, mumbling something about shanking. Oh, and this same group contained a girl who once misread a recipe for wontons and added a quarter cup of ginger instead of a quarter teaspoon. Quite the memorable experience.